This video is about week 16 after a midfoot fusion and bone graft that I had for a Lisfranc dislocation on July 30th, 2024. What I was working on during that 16th week after the surgery included the following things. I was continuing to transition out of the walking boot. I was getting used to more natural ankle, foot, and toe movements while walking because the walking boot very much controlled these movements while I was in it. Everything felt a bit stiff while I was learning to walk without the boot after my surgery. I was working on getting hourly steps at least 12 hours a day to make sure that I was getting in regular movements, and I was using my watch to help me track activity to make sure that I was getting in more regular activity. I drove for the very first time that week since my surgery on Saturday, November 16th. It was a very short distance, about 8 minutes total, and driving longer distances was going to take some work, but it was a good first time even though I was very nervous driving for the first time in 3.5 months. I was also working on increasing the amount of exercise that I was doing at the gym, and I was working on getting outside to walk for about 10 to 15 minutes at a time. Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, day 105 after the surgery. My foot was pretty painful that day. It had been a painful journey so far getting used to walking without the walking boot on and having shoes or slippers on instead because they would press painfully against the surgical scar, which was on top of my foot. Having the support of shoes and slippers helped a lot for arch support of my foot, but having any pressure at all against the scar really hurt my foot even if I loosened my shoes or had a looser slipper. When I was home, I alternated between walking with slippers and walking barefoot, which would hurt my foot in a different way after a while because I didn't have arch support. The sneakers were also starting to get slightly easier, but they still weren't super comfortable against the scar. Matt and I took a short walk outside without the crutches. I was walking a bit slower and walking felt a bit awkward because my foot, ankle, and big toe didn't all bend quite right together for walking yet, but it felt great to be working on walking more. I went to trivia night with Matt and a few of our friends, and it was the first time I went to trivia without the walking boot. Our waitress and one of the other teams that we had befriended noticed immediately, and they were really happy to see the progress. Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, day 106 after my surgery. I had physical therapy, which was not easy, but it was helpful as usual. I had some new exercises that day. I usually did the stationary bike, but they were all being used, so I did the treadmill for 5 minutes instead. It somehow felt unnatural walking on the treadmill, but I was able to do it, and it was good practice to be walking at an even pace. The exercise that continued to be the most difficult was having to balance on my right foot, the surgical foot, for 30 seconds 3 times. Matt and I did the gym in the evening, which I felt like I very much needed. I was able to do some of the weight machines that didn't put too much stress on my foot since I had just had physical therapy that day, and I felt like my mood was very much improved after we went to the gym. Thursday, November 14th, 2024, day 107 after my surgery. My foot was starting to do better with walking. It was still hurting and I was still feeling pressure in my foot, but it was getting a little easier. I was able to walk outside in the evening with Matt for about 10 minutes pretty easily, although I was still walking slowly. I was able to get around the house more easily that day, and going up and down the stairs was getting easier. Going down the stairs was still more difficult than going up the stairs, and I still couldn't walk down the stairs with alternating feet, so walking down the stairs was taking longer. My foot hurt quite a bit towards the end of the day, but icing it and keeping it elevated did help a little. Friday, November 15th, 2024, day 108 after my surgery. Bending my big toe on its own was becoming a little easier, and that toe was starting to feel stronger and less stiff. It was still painful, but it was slowly becoming easier to move it a little more naturally. I officially retired my walking boot that day and put it away in the guest room. I was able to bring the laundry basket down both flights of stairs to the basement to do laundry, which was something I had previously needed Matt's help doing. My foot was feeling less painful for most of the day, but I was feeling a lot of pressure around where the hardware had been installed for the fusion. I took a 10-minute walk outside. My foot hurt afterwards, so I had to keep it elevated. However, I made the mistake of not icing my foot until later in the evening, so my foot was sore and a bit swollen overnight and into the next morning. I learned that even though I was 3.5 months out of surgery, that I was still going to need to ice my foot immediately after activity for a bit longer. Sunday, November 16th, 2024, day 109 after my surgery. I went driving for the first time after my surgery. It was a very short drive, about 3 to 4 minutes to run a couple of errands, then 3 to 4 minutes to return home. Matt came with me, and we figured it would be okay to give it a try because I would have several places to pull over on the way if I realized that my foot was hurting too much or I felt like I was having trouble driving. I was able to drive fine despite some initial nervousness about forgetting how to drive since it had been 3.5 months since I had last driven. Once I put my foot on the pedal to drive down the driveway and turn out of our driveway, it felt normal. The main difficulty was the resistance behind the brake and the accelerator, but otherwise it wasn't so bad. It ended up being a bit easier than I thought it would be. Once I parked and I started walking, I had some sharp pains in my foot, but after a few minutes of walking it got better. My foot was sore, but I felt okay enough to drive home. My foot did get pretty swollen for about an hour or two after we got home, and after about 10 to 15 minutes after we got home, I realized that my foot did hurt quite a bit from the short drive. I was also getting a lot of pressure inside my foot and on top of my foot, especially around the scar area. I had to spend the next 40 minutes icing all around my foot and ankle while we ate our lunch. I walked out to mail some Thanksgiving cards later that day, which took about 15 minutes, and it felt so good to be doing steps again. While I was walking, I could feel some of the stress and anxiety that had been building up since the surgery just leaving my body like a massive weight lifting away from me. There's something about walking outside that releases anxiety and stress for me, and getting to do that walking really helped a lot, even though my foot was hurting for the last few minutes of the walk. It felt good for my ankle to be walking, and it felt much less stiff after. I iced my foot and ankle as soon as I got home, and my watch congratulated me for taking the longest walk I have taken in the 3.5 months since my surgery. Matt and I brought up our Christmas tree and some of our decorations that evening. I had to take some breaks while we started decorating our tree, but it was so much fun to get started with decorating. Sunday, November 17th, 2024, day 110 after my surgery. Sophie came over for Taco Bell and Baja Blast Zero, which we have been looking forward to for weeks, and Matt and Sophie and I watched Designated Survivor together on Netflix. My foot was a bit sore still from all of Saturday's activities, so I had to keep my foot elevated and iced it while we watched our show. We also worked on our Christmas tree a bit with Sophie before she needed to leave. Matt and I went to the gym in the evening. I was able to do a good amount at the gym that day. My foot did get sore while I was at the gym, so I had to make sure to throw in some activities that didn't put too much weight on my foot. When we got home, after we got dinner ready, I elevated and iced my foot because it was very sore and stiff from the gym. Monday, November 18th, 2024, day 111 after my surgery. My mom took me to physical therapy. The balancing exercises continued to be the most difficult part of rehab, but my foot was starting to get less sore and painful during and after physical therapy. I was starting to be able to walk afterwards. Just 2 weeks ago, I would not have been able to do that. Not that long ago, I could barely move after physical therapy, even with the help of crutches. Now, during week 16, I was sore, but I was able to walk to the car and get back into my house without crutches to ice my foot without any issue. My physical therapist recommended during the session to use light compression socks, especially while driving and doing activities that are stressful for my foot, because my foot swelling for 1 to 2 hours after such a short drive sounded like a very long time to her, so I planned on giving that a try. I took a short 15-minute walk with Matt in the evening. I still had to walk more slowly than before, and the last few minutes definitely felt like a struggle because my foot got really sore, but it felt so great to be outside walking. For those of you who have stuck around for this entire video, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to leave in the comments any challenges or successes that you have been having. I would love to hear from you. See you all soon.